Good evening, my lovelies, and welcome. I'm Lady MCreepsta. I first do want to apologize for my absence of late. I have been more than a tad under the weather recently, but the good news is all is well now. And as such, it is time to complete The Ogre's Nest by Steven Aguilera. If you have just joined me, my dears, be sure to listen to part 1 and part 2 of The Ogre's Nest before proceeding to this episode. Before we proceed, though, I'd like to take a moment to thank my beautiful dark family on Patreon for your continuous support. Family members such as Danny White, Nicholas Corries, Dawn Fritzwater, Melissa Perez, Honey Santiago, Oliver Dace, Karen Parrott, L. Andrew Augustus, Dana Fringer, Steven Aguilera, Tay the Fluth, Laura Setter-Penry, Bill Thornsley, and everybody mentioned in the description below. And now though, my dears, it is time. So come, lean in closer, and we'll begin. In the basement, Boyle gently sets his father's body in front of the ogre's dark entrance. He always wondered why his dad left, and if he'd ever come back. Turned out, he was right here the whole time. Tearing up, he offers a silent prayer and slides his remains into the grim hole. 2 bursts from a police siren set him on edge. He chucks in the empty money sacks and his grandpa's security uniform, but opts to keep a gun with belt. Perching himself on an old milk crate, he uncovers foil from a small front yard-facing window. The policeman and a policewoman exit their vehicle in front of his home. Boyle ducks and examines the still-warm pistol in his hand. Much blood from the ogre's recent self-inflicted gunshot wound still trails into the hole with the evidence he just disposed of. Panic overtakes him until a clacking of high heels calls his attention to Patty innocently trotting from his neighbor's house toward hers. The cop gestures for her to stop, and she hangs down her head. The man next door steps out in a bathrobe with an arm around his new blonde girlfriend, a tad proud of the situation. Patty makes eye contact with them and deflates. The blonde looks to him with suspicion and then to Patty with disgust. Deep breathing originates from the ogre's hole. Boyle hops down. Several yards into the opening, the uninjured alpha ogre tears dried flesh off Boyle's father like jerky. Sneering, Boyle raises the gun. With indistinct chatter from the police radio out front, he gawks at his firearm and then to the approaching creature. Rolling the tool cabinet to block it, the foul primitive hollers and rams the heavy steel. They had to have heard that. He checks the front yard situation. The patrolman now has his attention focused right at him. Boyle shrinks, replaces the foil, and scrambles to stash his handgun when jolted by a tapping on the glass. The beast grunts and gnarls. The policeman taps more insistently. The monster goes wild. Boyle fights to keep the barrier in place. After a prolonged moment, the officer abruptly runs off shouting, "Hey! Hey!" Boyle peeps out. Patty struggles to shake free as the policewoman wrestles her against the hood. Other neighbors gather as she is shoved into the car, and they drive away. Flabbergasted, he rewraps the window and lets out a sigh. He looks into the hole. His father is gone. 1 a.m. Wind and rain bombard the creaky house. In the hallway, Boyle hangs the picture of his dad cradling him as a baby and straightens it with a sense of dignity. Thunder claps. Water drips into buckets. Onto the family room floor, he sets an ornate ceramic lamp and the 1908 scotch, half empty. Who knows what other treasures are buried in these stockpiles of stuff, and who knows what riches those little savages have already taken away. Switching on the lamp, something rustles in the room. Each item is handled with a degree of tension and alertness for anything threatening. He sifts through beer cans, doilies, and countless TV guides until uncovering a photo. Palm trees and the word Hawaii are formed into its plastic souvenir frame. His grandparents hold up tropical drinks with open-mouthed smiles. His grandmother wears glimmering jewelry. They couldn't be happier. Bursting up, he hurls it across the room when his leg gives out and he collapses, striking his head against the china cabinet. He tries to push up but slumps and perceives a dreamy, echoed banging. Young Boyle tumbles down the steps. Blood flows from his face as the slinky reaches him at the basement floor. Young Patty screams, her pitch morphing into adult Patty screaming from within the bleak foundation crack. He awakens back in present time in a faintly illuminated space with blood dripping from his temple. Straining to think, he is unsure if the shrill he heard was from his dream or actually just happened. Gaining his bearings, he finds himself now in the basement with one leg deep inside the hole. He props himself up but winces from many new bite marks and scratches covering his body. His grungy sweatsuit is in tatters. A faint edge of light around the foiled windows informs him that morning has come and the rain has gone. He pulls himself to his feet and extracts the gun from the secret room. The kitchen has been ransacked. His boxes of food are tipped and empty. The phone handset has been chewed off at the cord. In the family room, he finds his whiskey bottle knocked over, its precious contents reduced to a brown stain on the carpet. Collapsing on the couch, he appears sickly and more pale than usual as he raises the remote. Its red light blinks on and off, but the room remains unlit. His TV is gone. He beholds its well-worn remote and listlessly releases it onto the floor. It lands beside his drumming rock star sketch. He tosses this into a pile of many other drawings of things he would never do, in places he would never go, with friends he would never have. As mail pushes through his front door, he barely reacts. Patty. Dragging himself into the entranceway, he slumps and stares through the slot with eyes glazed over. The house across the street has a large moving van parked out front. The for sale or rent sign is now absent. His heart sinks even lower, but then perks up slightly. Sheepishly looking about, Patty sets her trash bins by the curb. She crosses the street and flirts with one of the two well-groomed young men moving in. The other man picks trash off their immaculate lawn and looks to Boyle's house with contempt. He then kisses his partner's cheek as a hint to Patty before going inside. Stunned, she waves politely and heads home. Boyle rises and watches her through the peephole with dead eyes. She halts, looks directly back, and approaches with reluctance. Can she see him? Could she this whole time? Arriving at his door, she pauses before softly knocking. He locks his gaze upon her, presses the gun under his chin, and cocks it. She inhales deeply, holds her breath, and slips a package through the mail slot between his legs. He struggles to process what is happening when startled by a sharp bang. Disoriented, he inspects his unfired gun and looks out the peephole. Patty is crying. She rears back to strike the door again, but refrains and leaves. Boyle kneels. Wrapped with care, the package is patterned with festive birthday cakes and confetti. Next to a small white bow is scribbled, Patty. He frowns and looks away in thought. Tearing as little as possible, he unwraps a small framed photo of Patty with her dog in their backyard. She holds a faint smile. He stares. Decades of repressed anguish well up and release. He uncocks the gun and forces himself to his feet. Summoning his courage, he unfastens the chain lock with a shivery hand and makes a vain attempt to tidy himself before accepting the futility. Gripping the knob, he wrestles with the blocked and disused oak door until it finally unsticks. Warm sunlight strikes his face and he squints harshly. He takes in deep lungfuls of fresh morning air as it washes over his skin. A chaotic symphony of birds performs for him as he takes in his commonplace surroundings with profound wonderment. With feelings of euphoria mixed with terror, he inches towards the sidewalk whilst flinching at the man next door clunking his trash bins by the curb. Snatching up some rubbish, he hurls it over his fence onto Boyle's sticker bushes without looking. Boyle's anxiety culminates. He glances for witnesses and scuttles to Patty's when an ogre bolts from her trash and tears past the side of her house to the barking of her dog. She whistles twice for its silence. Catching his breath, the sight of tipped bins belonging to other neighbors dawns on him. Because of him, the ogres found their taste for human scraps. But it would seem that even his near-endless supply wouldn't be enough for them. Scowling, he storms back to the house. He rushes into the basement with the ceramic lamp, tossing the shade aside. He seizes 3 heavy-duty extension cords and connects them together with the lamp. Strapping on the gun belt, he puts his fears aside and crawls into the widened crack, following the black trail of ogre blood. Squirming along for about a minute, the tunnel branches into 3. From there, the network of shafts grows more complex. Many direct upward, yet no sunlight can be discerned. With the bloody tracks now only faintly present, a wet, ripping sound echoes from a chamber ahead. The Alpha, easily identifiable as the biggest and ugliest, lashes at another as they cannibalize what's left of the dead ogre at the blood trail's end. Caught up in their feeding frenzy, the poor-sighted brutes remain oblivious to Boyle, who reverses through the channel with care. Following random bits of trash, he probes his lamp in and out of passageways in search of something. Wind howls from an ominous opening. With it drifts a putrid odor. He directs his light into the 30-foot wide cavern, just tall enough to stand in. Hundreds of human carcasses, including his father's, are hoarded here, roughly organized based on states of decay. More imposing still, he stares dumbfounded at a grand nest. It consists of a great volume of garbage mixed with ogre sewage, intertwined with his many possessions. Its semblance to his own home is not lost on him. He pulls his bottle of rubbing alcohol and splashes it about. He taps the infestation with a toe, then kicks. It squirms with abundant unseen life. With heightened motivation, he repeatedly flicks the thumbwheel of his lighter. A chorus of groans and snorts rises. Finally, a weak fire is sustained. He surveys his furniture, old toys, photographs of grandparents, empty money sacks, television, and father's remains, and then sets them alight. A blue flame rolls through amid deafening squeals. He dives out and works his way back until met by a deep growling. Snarling objectors fill the channel beside him. He fumbles for his pistol in the confined space when an ungodly roar parts their numbers, revealing the mighty Alpha. It waddles menacingly to him as the others contain their primal bloodlust. Boyle takes aim. From this angle, he recognizes all of their little penises. The Alpha's male organ, however, is curiously absent. This is no ogre. It's an ogress. His attention then drifts to his own crotch, which she once again sniffs. With smoldering eyes, she resonates a low, gargling purr. A strange feeling of violation surges through him, a much-needed boost to his self-esteem, offset, of course, by the thought that such a grotesque creature would deem him a suitable mate. She is trembling. He gazes upon her disfigured face. She gazes upon his. Slowly, she leans in with puckering lips, putting it all out there. Not sure what to expect, going all in. He nods, eyes glistening with tears. Their moist, tentative lips softly meet. No judgments, just two crazy kids in a crazier world. With hearts beating as one, his body goes limp, releasing the gun in ecstasy. For the first time in years, he feels young again, like a schoolboy. Some ogres watch with envy, others must turn away. Boyle grows overwhelmed, unsure of these forbidden feelings awakening inside him. His brain doesn't know the answer, but his heart sure does. As their mouths separate, a delicate tendril of saliva remains romantically connected between their tender, quivering lips, until finally their bond is broken. Brimming with tears, he feels a profound sense of belonging. Could this kindred spirit be the companionship he's been lacking for so long? Or will it be fleeting? Could this be his new family? What about Patty? It's all happening so fast. A cough escapes his lips. The ogress sniffs the air and turns in the direction of her nest, which is currently on fire. It is here that Boyle fully comprehends the magnitude of his miscalculation. Puzzled, they return their attention to him, but only his gun lay present. The ogress's full venom is brought to bear as she bellows and races to her nest. The others charge after Boyle, besides themselves with rage. Wheezing, Boyle squirms through a random tunnel with both raging smoke and ogres close behind. He gropes for his absent firearm and then stabs at the screeching devils with his lamp as they lurch back and swat at its white-hot glow. The interconnected extension cords reach their limit. He abandons the lamp and clambers up one of the inclined channels. Below, the light bulb breaks. Pressing blindly upward, his head strikes a ceiling. Oddly, it is padded. He manages to ignite his lighter. This is a coffin. The lid buckles from the weight of 6 feet of earth. The shrilling swarm lunges up as he kicks wildly. There is nowhere to hide and no hope of breaking through above or below. He takes a deep breath and douses the flame. "Woof, woof, woof, woof!" he shouts as loudly as he can. Flickering the lighter back on, the beasts are gone. He scrambles back down, but the lamp and extension cords are lost, and with that, so is he. Gauging his direction by the fluttering flame of his bick, he snakes through the crumbly soil but becomes wedged and unable to draw air. Not far behind, innumerable ogres clamor in pursuit. Struggling to squeeze his portly frame through the narrow passage, he empties his lungs and writhes until free. His root splits into 4. With his tiniest of torches giving no sure sign, he shows indecision before plunging through his best guess. Smoke funnels from the ogre's opening into the dim basement. Choking, he emerges and feels for the staircase. Reaching the top, he turns left but is unable to find the doorknob in the smoky dark. Switching on the light, he sees a brick wall where the kitchen door should be. Baffled, he squints into the basement. A dozen sets of murderous eyes reflect back. He finally locates the kitchen door on the opposite wall from where it should be. Dashing through, he wedges a chair under the knob. Wrong house. The layout of the room is the same, but reversed. He pivots to the back door, but recoils from a large dog barking at him from the other side, a bark he knows all too well. Staggering back, he glances about. Dishes are piled in the sink. Flies and ants blanket every filthy counter. He wanders into the dining room. Much clutter and junk mail cover the table. The TV in the family room is on but muted. The drapes are all closed. Spurred by the sound of scratching from the basement, he swings open the front door but stops cold. Patty's red Ford Fiesta is still parked in the driveway. Gathering himself, he turns to the bedroom door at the end of the hall. The door is ajar. Neglected belongings and clothes are strewn within. Patty is sprawled across the mattress. He couldn't be dirtier as he looks himself over and combs his hair with his hands. Sighing, he taps on the door, but to no reaction. His heart is racing. He steps in. No response. His tension rises. She remains motionless. Grimacing, he shuffles to the bed. On the nightstand are 4 empty bottles of Funkel's whiskey and another half full. Next to them is a paper bag with a pharmacy logo. Inside is a pamphlet with the ugly duckling girl from the Jack-Off commercial looking dejected. In Patty's limp hand is the empty prescription bottle. He taps her face, frantically hunting for signs of life. It flops unresponsively in his direction. He grabs her wrist and attempts to discern a pulse. Unsure if he's doing it correctly, he repositions his grip. Boyle hurls the pill bottle across the room. Vanquished, he leans in to kiss her when the smoke detector finally trips, prompting his reluctant departure. He steps onto the front porch, not caring who might see. At her mailbox, he halts at the uncanny sight of his front door mail slot. A woman from the cemetery screams. Black vapor rises from the soil of every grave. In his basement, the ogress barrels from the opening on fire and slams into the greasy stairs, setting them alight. Instinctively, she stops, drops, and rolls. With singed hair, she stinks of raw sewage smeared over roadkill on a hot day. Blisters on her charred and liquefied flesh ooze blood and pus. And she was ugly before. She reacts to the barking outside and turns to the stairs, seething. Boyle slogs into his kitchen and opens the basement door. Smoke billows in. He turns and slumps against the dingy stove. Gripping his throbbing leg, he closes his eyes and waits for death to take him. The ogress emanates from the doorway and their eyes lock. Face to face with his livid counterpart, he weakly gestures for her to come. She creeps forward while the others surge in after. Choking, his eyes roll back and he flops over. Bleeding from his temple, he lies semi-conscious with eyes open, but vacant. Two distant whistles bring silence to the barking dog. With mouths foaming, the snarling carnivores bare their lengthy teeth. As his eyes flutter shut, Patty's call finally registers and he bursts awake. Fighting dizziness and pain, he arises tenaciously. The ogre moves back. Fumbling for the refrigerator door, he digs deep for the strength to pull himself up. Alas, his leg buckles and the fridge tips, sloshing a slurry of sludge across the floor. Even the ogres are repulsed. He looks about, unable to move or act. The ogres go calm, knowing that they have him. His eyes dart about his atrocious abode. The stains, mildew, decades-old garbage, putrid dishes, spoiled food teeming with insects, all the nauseating sights and smells of his rancid, revolting life while himself in his worst state of personal hygiene. Flames from the basement ignite the discolored wallpaper. The ogress snaps at the others for first rights to the meal. Mustering his courage amid a perfect storm of chaos and shame, Boyle clenches his face as his building inner conflict erupts. "Help me!" The ogres gape with ears perked. The back door bursts open with Patty's foot and her barking German shepherd. The creatures whip around. The direct sunlight strains their eyes. Patty shrieks. Her angry dog launches. Boyle raises his arms, but it jumps over him and positions itself in his defense. She whistles and the growling canine refrains. Wrinkling her nose at the stink, she looks to grubby Boyle on the floor, sitting in filth in a smashed and burning kitchen, bleeding and surrounded by monsters. At a loss for words, she gives him a flustered expression of, "What the hell?" For a moment, he acts as if he can actually explain, but ends up raising his palms and shaking his head. She turns her attention to the ogres and lunges at them, fluttering her hands to shoo them away while making a nervous, quivering, squealing sound. They don't know what to make of her and look up and down at her while backing away. Timidly, she squats and reaches out to Boyle. His eyes snap in her direction and she retracts. He seizes her, hugging her tightly. She repositions her nose away from his armpit but earnestly returns his embrace. The ogress stares daggers and hisses. The growling dog fends her back. Patty heaves Boyle to his feet and tries to speak but can only choke. They crouch low into the living room beneath the hanging smoke. The retreating ogres sneer and roar as the dog drives them into the basement. Boyle whistles. The German shepherd breaks off and rejoins them. With great effort, they yank open the front door. The dog runs out first. Boyle glimpses the bright eyes of the ogress watching them from the dining room. Exiting with haste, he unexpectedly rushes back in and returns with the Monet tucked under his arm. Patty slams the faulty door and helps him to her front yard. The little girl snatches her pink frisbee from his porch and runs off to her waiting sister. Black smoke seeps from every crack of his house. Flames burst through the roof. Sirens from distant emergency vehicles grow louder. Through mixed emotions, a strange calm settles over Boyle. Finally, he is free. Patty takes his hand. Her regretful eyes connect with his when they are startled by a boom. About a dozen men, including his other neighbor and the couple across the street, battle to smash in his sturdy oak door while the rest of the neighborhood gathers. Boyle is both confounded and moved by their determination. Stepping forward, he looks around self-consciously and whistles. They glance over to him without the faintest hint of recognition. He waves insecurely. They look back and forth between his repugnant appearance and the repugnant house. Putting the pieces together, they show relief and back away to safety. Clinging to Boyle, Patty gives their neighbor a smug look of satisfaction. A spark of disappointment flashes over his face before spotting his disgruntled blonde girlfriend. The house goes up like a bonfire with enough fuel to burn for days. The neighborhood stares and then erupts in applause. Thank you for joining me this evening, my dears. If you've just stumbled upon my realm, welcome, my lovelies. Please do feel free to have a look around and be sure to hit that subscribe button before leaving. If you have found me on YouTube, be sure to hit that bell icon as well to be notified of new uploads. If you enjoyed this tale, my dear, and are watching on YouTube, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and leave a comment below, as this helps others find my realm as well. That, unfortunately, my lovelies, is all the time we have this evening. Till next time, sweet dreams.